Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coaching from the Soul. We have a topic today around I don't know. And if that gets you intrigued, I'm going to hand you over to Jen, who's going to kick us off on how we reach that as we begin that exploration. So, welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, I'm curious to know where the I don't know is going to go because I'm not 100% certain about doing that. But that's one of the things about one of the questions that have recently struck me was someone asking, is it problematic not knowing? And I know for me personally, there's lots of areas where I can go, yeah, I'm quite happy not knowing. I don't get particularly up in my head if I don't know what I'm going to have for my tea in like 3 hours' time or whatever. I don't, I can be happy not knowing when the post is going to arrive on a particular day. And yet on other occasions, I can get up in my head about not knowing if the post is going to come if I'm waiting for something. You can tell I've got Christmas on my mind, aren't you? And whether, oh, is that present going to turn up in time for someone or not? But I know I'm a lot more comfortable not knowing than I would have been in the past. And equally, looking into the future, because a lot of not knowing is expecting to have an answer right now about something that's happening in the future, or at least the way I do it. Is that, yeah, am I okay waiting for that answer to come at its own pace? Is it okay for me not to have to intellectually work it out? Can I just look and wait to notice the answer when it turns up? Because that seems a lot less pressure and a lot more free to me approaching it that way. And another question that I've been answering recently, which I suspect a lot of people have been looking into the year ahead, was, what would you love for the next year? And one of the things that occurred to me was around I'd love to be pleasantly surprised in that area, which I actually then kind of went, actually, I think I'd love to be pleasantly surprised for the entire year. So my 2025 at the moment is looking like, I'm looking for pleasantly surprised because that to me sounds like I don't have to come up with the answers for that. Sure, I'm sure there will be goals that I will make up that I want, next logical steps. There's already things that I want, I'd really like to do that. But allowing that space for pleasantly surprised means that for me, it gives that space to be open for other things to arrive and for me to go, I'd really like to do that now, or not. Don't have to say yes to everything. But equally, the opportunity for that to happen sounds really lovely to me. To have that opportunity to actually go, yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, it wasn't what I was planning to do tomorrow, but yeah, let's do that instead. Or let's do it right now. So, despite the fact of having been years as a coach, where a lot of our focus has been traditionally about setting goals and all the planning, this seems more open to allow for possibility to enter into there. The thriving in the here, the allowing allowing that to wake up and to let go of some of that thinking that we can get bogged down with.
Hmm. I love your inquiry about am I okay waiting? Because I think I'm known as an organizer and uh, lots of smiles. And I like to prepare for everything because I think, okay, well, must get it right. And yet, I've certainly noticed over this last year that often if I've got a call tomorrow and I'm not quite sure what I need to do for it yet, but I've got something else happening in between, I know that the something else that's happening in between is going to give me a slightly different view to what I need to do for the next thing. And so, certainly where I traditionally would have prepared everything ahead or worried that I didn't know, what I've seen is there's almost a freedom in realizing that, oh, like something's going to happen between now and then that's going to give me a little bit more information for that next thing. So, yeah, that's been helpful to see. I think on the topic of I don't know, yeah, I've certainly got myself overwhelmed sometimes, I think, when I don't know. And that tends to be on the bigger decisions about where am I heading or what project might I get involved with next or the bigger things. But I can certainly see when I look back that it was some tiny little spark of an idea or something that happened that got me to do one tiny step towards something that then months later played out to be something else that then years later has turned out into something more. And that happened with like one tiny step rather than a big aha. And so I think that's quite helpful to see when I think, oh, I don't know, is to come back to, well, okay, what do I know? And is there some tiny step I can take right now? And it's almost that idea that like everything is growing a seed for something into the future, or whatever action is happening now, I can't see what it's going to become, but yeah, for me, there's some data looking back that helps because I can see the impact of the things that I did that have grown into things now, and actually, I suspect in those occasions I didn't know either. I just thought, no, I want to do that. I'm going to do this next little thing. So yeah, that feels quite freeing to know too. John, what comes up for you on this topic?
I love the exploration of I don't know, but trusting that if I take the first step, the other steps will unfold. And that reminds me of the Steve Jobs breadcrumbs. We talked about the breadcrumbs, but as you say, looking back, you can see their breadcrumbs. Looking forward, you can't. So being comfortable with I don't know is a great place to be. And I love how Jen laid it out that I don't know actually takes the pressure off you to be in charge, to be in control, to be comfortable with what comes up. And the link between pleasantly surprised and I don't know, I thought that was masterful. How can you be surprised if you know? So therefore, pleasantly surprised implies a not knowing. So that's good. I also had an experience of being unpleasantly surprised in a role as an interim sales director that I'm currently occupying. And I thought I prided myself on bringing love and light to business and being quite zen and understanding that everything's going to be okay until somebody said something about not delivering some orders that my salespeople had taken. And I was unpleasantly surprised by my nasty reaction towards that person. But at least I was able to catch myself and say, "Oh, wow, who did that? Where did that come from?" So I knew enough to settle that something was going on, something had triggered some thinking in that area. So the link between what we don't know and what can come out, yes, it can be relaxing. Yes, it can take the pressure off us. But I think you come to that place from living out of the essence of who we are and who we truly are, as opposed to living out of the ego of who we think we are. Because when I look back at a lot of the stuff that I would have read over the years and the need for control, affection, and belonging that humans have, that people like Jung and Freud would have talked about, and the control element involves certainty. which involves knowing that at an ego level, that drives us. So I think unless you've noticed the nature of ego, unless you've noticed the nature of thought created reality, sometimes it can be very difficult to live out of I don't know, because I know from my own experience, to say I don't know before I learned to live from my essence, to say I don't know was a scary thing for me to say, particularly in a position where people were expecting you to know. You were in a leadership position and they expected you to come up with the answers. It would have been very difficult for me to say I don't know. But as I have, I suppose, come home to myself more, grown more comfortable in my own essence, in my own soul nature, as I've grown more comfortable knowing that that's there, then I don't know comes out easily. I don't know creates a likeness. As Jen has said, I don't know is a much more relaxing place to move into a conversation. And as somebody once said, I don't know is the first step in learning. Because when you don't know, you've now got another expansion of what you do know whenever you start to get curious about what you don't know. And that comes. So to me, I don't know is a great place to come from. It relaxes you, it takes the stress off you, and it opens you up to curiosity and to learning. And hopefully being pleasantly surprised in 2025. So that's what I see and hear and I don't know.
Yeah, I think I love the idea of being pleasantly surprised too. Like that's such a wonderful one. As you were talking there, yeah, that's such an interesting question, isn't it? Like we started with like, is it problematic? I don't know, but I feel like we've almost gone full circle to actually what are the benefits of not knowing and seeing that they're quite a number. And that reminds me of this idea of what happens when we give up, because often I think I almost go through I don't know to kind of overwhelm to okay, I'm going to give up. And it's then that kind of magic moment of the idea comes through, be that after a night's sleep or, you know, just having kind of just thought, right, I don't know the answer to this. That seems to then invite something more. And I love the inquiry there that, well, actually, if we could see that in advance almost, then just go straight to, I don't know, being a good place to be. Oh, great. Well, what can we see now? Like, yeah, that could almost remove the whole overwhelm step that comes up. Yeah. So just seeing that as, okay, well, you know, I've always been like a board game person. Like my parents, I've played games for my entire life. I think child to adult, there'll be a number of those probably over Christmas time, but I like playing a game. I like solving a puzzle. And yet I think if I could see sometimes the bigger puzzles in life as, oh, I don't know, well, it's a bit like a game. Like, what can I see? Like, just so much more comes from that. And I know from experience in my, like I used to be like a engineer, telecoms engineer, like the number of times where I'd be like, I don't know how to fix that. And then the very next day it's like, ping, actually, I'm going to try that. Like, yeah, I love the idea of, you know, almost this idea in business of kind of an I don't know workshop. Like, actually, I was watching something recently, actually. It was from the British Heart Foundation. They were talking about their culture. And they talked about how they came up with wicked problems. And the idea being that these were problems that were just so difficult that they knew they couldn't solve them all in one go. But actually, what if you just accepted that, okay, let's get curious and let's see where we might go with that. And I just thought that speaks to this too, like this idea of, okay, well, when we get a wicked problem that's just so hard for us to solve, do we kind of A, go, oh my God, we're not going to get anywhere with it? Or B, do we go, well, what might I see here? Like, yeah, I thought that was a lovely language for kind of looking at this too. Go on, Jen, I see.
Yeah, because I love theatre and the musicals, etc. My immediate first went wicked, like wicked, and went with the musical, thinking problems that defy gravity. Yes, and yet for me that would make perfect sense because I know that's how I used to look at not knowing stuff. I would make something that's up around something that would seem to defy all logic, all possibility, all laws of nature, etc., like defying gravity. And then would make it my responsibility to actually then find the answer to that thing. And unless I was 100% certain I had that answer, I was not happy with the fact I didn't know it. And as you've been talking, I went, oh, actually, yeah, I hadn't realized at the start of today how my relationship with not knowing has obviously changed. Because now I'm a lot more relaxed with, oh, I don't need to know the answer and I don't need to figure it out. It's not my role to do that in a lot of cases. I'm sure there's some parts of my life that I still think it is my role, but it doesn't look like that from a general perspective.
I think what you hit the nail on the head there, Jen, and you raised it as well, Graham, when you talk about, we asked, is I don't know problematic? It's your relationship with I don't know that decides whether I don't know is problematic or beneficial. And if you have a problematic relationship with I don't know, the benefits that come from it in terms of being stress-free or lack of overwhelm or curiosity, they're more difficult to accrue. But when you have a like relationship with I don't know, you get these benefits. You get the benefit of curiosity, you get the benefit of fun. I mean, if we talk about humans, and one of the greatest motivations we have as humans is solving problems in as children and as adults, we call it the nature of play in any role. Some people refer to it as solving problems. So I don't know means you get the chance to solve the problem. But if you've got a relationship with I don't know that makes it scary for you, well, then we close down the ability to absorb wisdom. The universal intelligence of life has difficulty getting the signal through to us because we're so caught up in our problematic nature of I don't know. So I don't know is a beautiful place to be, so long as your relationship with I don't know is one of understanding the beauty that it can lead to, the new learning that it can lead to, the curiosity that it can lead to. So, and actually the need to go in when you're comfortable with I don't know, the need to go into doing a workshop or going into a meeting without having done any serious planning. I'm not saying don't plan for some meetings, but I am saying it does take a lot of pressure off you whenever you're comfortable with I don't know. And maybe I don't know combined with 10,000 hours of experience in certain topics is useful as well.
Yeah, I think it reminds me as well, like that piece you mentioned about the relationship with I don't know, like it's when we make I don't know a problem with ourselves that there's something wrong with us because we don't know. Like I think I do that probably more often than I ought to, but I can see that when I do, then that shuts down the system because suddenly it's like there's something wrong with me because I ought to know how to do this, and it takes away all of that bandwidth as you describe it for the answers to come. I know I would, because the as you say, we're looking to solve a problem, but the problem we're now trying to solve is there's something wrong with me, as opposed to when I've got this thing in front of me, I wonder what I could see about it. Like that. Yeah. Go on, Jen.
Yeah. And I think we've all proved in our own lives, because I don't think that's a Graham thing. I think that's a thing that a lot of us do, that we can do it that way. It's when you see that you don't have to do that. And when you catch yourself doing it, or at least when I catch myself doing it now, excuse me, it's very much a case of, oh, I'm doing it again. And just that noticing it often is enough to be able to realize I'm not being me. I've drifted away from that. And occasionally I still get caught up in it. But that's just us being human.
Well, and again, that's the normalizing thing, isn't it? That back to that being a group thing instead of, or John talked about it as a manager or a leader, like often the expectation is there that you should have all the answers. But the moment it becomes I don't know, but let's go into that together. How can we as a team come up with the answer? What questions do we need to ask? I don't know becomes a wonderful place to be together. Like there's something unifying about that, as opposed to isolating by it being like, I don't know the answer to this one, and there's something wrong with that.
I think it's so true what you've said, and it's just we're seeing the power of I don't know. I suppose whenever we started our conversation before we started recording, I don't know was very much part of what are we going to say? I don't know. But I think when you grow into the relationship of comfort with I don't know, then things like this can unfold. And to see, as I have seen here this evening in the last few minutes, how powerfully the relationship we have with I don't know is the key to whether I don't know is good or bad, or whether I don't know is going to lead to something positive or going to lead to something negative. Whether I don't know is going to lead to me saying something about me, and if it says something in me that's broken, then suddenly the I don't know has led to me going off somewhere else looking for answers outside of myself, whenever the answers were always inside myself. So if you think there's something wrong with you, you'll generally go and get somebody else to fix it. Whereas totally the wrong place. So I don't know. It's a powerful, what is it? It's a powerful set of words, sentence, tool, a powerful instigator into seeing things about ourselves, things about who we are, what we're about, things about, maybe it's a test of how close have we got to our essence, how close have we got to our true self, as opposed to our false self, or our thought-filled self. So yeah, I can feel a kind of a workshop coming on at some stage with a group of people. I don't know. Discuss your feelings about the sentence I don't know, and what it means and where it leads you. Yeah. I don't know. Problematic, beneficial. Discuss. I can feel that one coming on in a workshop someday.
Yeah, I think it would be quite transformative. Go on, Jan, you were going to say something.
Yeah. And over the years, I've spoken to a lot of people starting out as being a coach who've got up in the head and think that because they don't know in advance where the conversation is going and all the questions that they're going to ask during that coaching session, that there was something wrong with them. And the number of times I've gone, why would you know how a conversation is going to go? without that other person that's part of that conversation actually being there and responding. And partly I can see so much connections between, oh, well, I'm comfortable not knowing where a conversation is going to head. Why in other areas is it an issue if I don't know where the next step is going to be? Other than, oh, I've got a story in my head that I should know a 12-step plan for business, for etc., and know each stage and all the fine detail for that. But I can have it as a guide, I guess. But I don't know that's definitely going to happen. And can I be as comfortable in that scenario as I am with just having a light-hearted conversation with someone?
And I wonder how much of our time we spend as human beings, like imagining the conversation we're going to have with someone next, like running through all the different scenarios, and then even running through the different events we've got coming up in the next few days, and what we're going to say, and well, what if I say this, and how if I do that, and actually the moment we're in the conversation, in the moment, it's things occur. But and I think for me, I think there is a value in having an element of preparedness. Like that does make sense to me. Although, like I said earlier, I see recently that the closer that preparedness is to the actual event, the more useful it is because something's going to happen in between that's going to inform that. But then there's also something about recognizing, am I having this conversation in my head or am I having it in real life? And one of those being more useful.
And I think it's about the balance between the preparedness and the presence. If you're that well prepared that you show up full of preparation and lack presence, well then you're gonna struggle because you're not there. Whereas if you get that balance between the preparation and the presence and allowing the flavor of I don't know to inspire you. I mean, can you imagine being a coach and trying to listen to what somebody's saying and at the same time trying to figure out which coaching model or tool am I now going to use to help this person? You know, I couldn't imagine that, and yet that was my first formal coach training was about which model are you going to use, and I love the fact that I still have the book, The 76 Models of Coaching, on my shelf to remind me never to pick it up and read it. So the show up and deal with what shows up, one that we're familiar with. Or there is one model in that book actually that I do use, and it's a Tim Galway one, which is brilliant performance equals capacity minus interference. I like that one. And if our capacity is infinite, well, then there's only one thing to focus on in order to get a brilliant performance, and that's what's the interference. And invariably, the interference starts up here. And that's where I kind of feel we've nearly come full circle on the I don't know. The interference from I don't know starts with our relationship with it. Do we think it's a problem? Or do we think it's beneficial? Discuss. I am going to use that in a workshop. I definitely am. If I've got nothing else from this evening, I've got a lovely syndicate activity for a group of people in January. I'll report back in the new year as to whether or not they were impressed by that.
Yeah. So much, I think, from just looking at that and being comfortable with that. That's what we're talking about, aren't we? The benefit, the power, the connection, this power of vulnerability of admitting I don't know, actually being a connecting thing. I can see I can see so many times where actually I don't know has been a personal problem, and yet what this conversation has brought out is that I can probably see more where it's actually been beneficial. Not just beneficial, but fun, exciting. You know, we've talked about the theatre, we've talked about games, we've talked about what happens when you don't know, but I think it would be quite boring to have the answer to everything, as opposed to, you know, we like to solve a problem. So when we can look at it that way, then suddenly, yeah, it's that idea of growth, isn't it? Like the growth that we often are seeking comes in solving the problem and getting past the don't know.
Yeah. And before coming across this inside out understanding, one of the teaching uh, spaces that we used to play in, if you like, one of the perspectives that we used was, I don't know, let's find out. And from there, I mean, that in itself seemed a lot freer, but it still felt like it was my job to find the answer to that. Whereas now it seems more like the let's find out is, oh, let's look, let's just notice it and look in that direction rather than the, oh, I need to find that.
I think it involves a trust in the universal intelligence of life as well. So to have that relationship with I don't know involves that trust. So I think it's something that just struck me. If we don't have that trust, if we don't trust that that's within us and connected to us, we're going to struggle as well. So it's good to see that and to notice that.
And we've had that described before as the equipment, haven't we? Yeah, the more that we can see that when we give up or when we don't know, that actually something occurs to us, and oh, hang on a minute, is that how human beings are? And we got that with us at all times, and it's available if we look. Like it's wonderful to see. I think it quite often can be clouded the moment that we decide, oh, actually, there's something wrong here because I don't know. But I think the more often that we see that whatever was going on, whenever we get that moment of peace, the next thing that we need to do does occur, and that we can trust that, and that it's always going to be there. That's a pretty cool piece of equipment to be carrying around.
And I still remember the first time when I discovered that there was more outside of my head that I didn't know than was inside my head. I remember being on a Zoom call with a group of coaches and somebody else was doing the talking. Whatever they said, they just triggered this insight in me that I have lived my life as if what I know and my knowledge is so important and so vital. And yet there is so much out there that I don't know that I have access to when I'm not up in my head thinking about what I do know or even thinking about what I don't know. It just that the insight just struck me. And it struck me as so funny that I had lived my life thinking that I had more in here than there was in the universe. And how silly can anybody be to think that? And yet that's how it looked like I lived my life. And for a big part of it, I don't know, was not in my vocabulary.
Yeah. I know whenever I drive my parents anywhere, they'll they'll will there will always be the question days ahead, what time are we leaving? And my response is normally the same as, I don't know. It depends what the traffic's going to be doing and what the GPS is telling me the traffic is doing. And it struck me that I'm quite okay relying on looking to see what the traffic's doing in that moment and not knowing a precise minute that I plan to leave. And yet, it didn't used to look like that because in the physical world we now have GPS things that can predict what the traffic's doing. But in my internal world, I'm a lot more reliant on looking at that own wisdom that sometimes is also referred to as our internal GPS there as well. So yeah, it is a matter of just noticing. And until you have got familiar with doing that, I get that it can sound like this just sounds like magical thinking.
Yeah. We've talked, I think, noticing comes up so often, but I think it's that thing where the more you see it, the more you can trust in it, and then the more you can trust in it. And again, being curious, just thinking, well, what could I see here is often, that often so helpful in any situation. And I'm reminded I posted something on LinkedIn the other day, and I had one of those like, I'd like to say something, but I'm not sure where to go with this. And then randomly through, as I was thinking, I got this. It was a Whizbit thing which was a children's TV program from 1984, which I do remember, but like somewhere in my mind, I got this little song come up, and with the help of Google, figured out what it was I was remembering. And it was actually really apt for what I was trying to write about. But that was one of those noticing moments for me, because instead of thinking, well, actually, I've got to have it all up here, or I have to write, I used to be a big to-do list person. I'm less so now because I realize how much there is access to something. But I was almost laughing to myself afterwards that, oh, somewhere in this connected brain is like the memory of something from, I can't do the maths, but 30, 40 years ago. And actually just thinking, well, I wonder what could be useful here. Suddenly something came up. And yeah, noticing how often those things actually happen is really useful too. Like having the space for an idea to come through. I think I saw John thinking of saying something then, and then
I was so excited about what I was going to say, I started to cough. You said something there just about seeing and noticing, and it struck in me the question as well. Whenever I'm faced with I don't know, what am I not seeing? Is a question that I can ask myself as well, and to be happy to relax into the what am I not seeing, and then not spend the time trying to figure out what am I not seeing, but just to ask the question and then going having a cup of tea or going for a walk or going out and looking at the birds or smelling the roses, and then come back and what I'm not seeing. Hopefully I will see it, particularly if I'm on a screen looking at something, trying to solve a problem. What am I not seeing? Or if I'm just trying to compose something or write something. So I just think I find that a helpful question as well.
Very much so. It again points to this workshop we're going to be interested to hear about in terms of, I don't know, problematic or beneficial, and how might we look at that? I'm wondering, Jen, as we come towards the end of our session today, whether, as you started us off with such a fun question, whether you might want to close us off with any What struck you today?
Well, at the moment, I've got the Whizbit theme tune stuck in my head. Thanks for that, Graham. Yeah, I mean, it does strike me so much about what we mean by comfort as well is an interesting aspect of, for me, being okay with something is different to being comfortable with it. And at this present moment, it looks like this is another one of those things where I don't know if it's infinite itself, but in the sense that it can always expand with my level of comfort levels with that I'm happy with just sitting in that and allowing the possibility for, oh, that can become even more comfortable. So that's what's fresh in my mind right this very instant.
And can I add, Jen, that the other C word, whenever you say become more comfortable, maybe with an increase in consciousness, more comfort comes from sitting with I don't know.
And a greater sense of awareness of what's happening. Yeah. That sounds a lovely way to leave us for today. So thanks very much to both of you for that exploration, and Jen for kicking us off with what's been quite an enlightening topic. So yeah, what more can you see? What are you not seeing? And the benefit of really seeing I don't know and its superpower. That feels to be where we got to. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you, Graham. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks all.